Hi everyone, welcome to the EGM reunion. Thank you so much for coming. Yay, that's right, come on, energy. My name is Frank Cifaldi, and I was chosen by this guy here to moderate this panel of former EGM editors. So let's actually start chronological by hire date with an intro from each of you.
All right. My name is Ken Williams. I'm of the panel here. I was hired first. I started on the FCI helpline straight out of still going to college. I learned that EGM was operating locally and out of my hometown of Lombard, Illinois, and I just had to go apply there. And they gave me a job on the helpline, and after a while, I earned a place as an editor in making fact files and previews and that, and the rest is history. So, hope to live up to some of your expectations.
I want to pause there because I still find that really weird. So EGM, the magazine, in like 89, 90, something like that, right, was also operating the helpline for like the publishers of Ultima and the Nintendo.
And Toho. Yep.
And Toho, so you were helping people with Godzilla and Ultima.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, when I was there, it was just the FCI games pretty much. Like Ultima was like my jam back then, so I made a guide for it that we would use to help the people who were calling in get through. Like I created my own maps and everything, and that's what got me in my foot in the door at EGM.
Did you write the hint book I saw on the show floor today?
No.
Okay. All right, next up.
All right. I guess that's me. I'm going to say that half of my story is almost exactly the same as Ken's there. My name's Mike Vallas. I actually started with EGM, I want to say, was it back in like 91, 92 is when I started there. I was a fan of the magazine. I was like all excited. I would always go with my friends and everything. We'd page through it, and it's like, at high school, I was just like, paging through and just always enjoying it. Was a complete introvert at that time. And I noticed that there was that their address was like very similar. I was like, I realized that EGM worked. Like, I thought they were like this place in like California with this warehouse and everything. No, they were like down the street from me. I was like, oh my God. And there was actually one person I knew, his name was John. He actually applied for the FCI hotline, and he got the job working there. And so he said, yeah, you want to go work for that too? I said, all right. I applied there, but I actually did know some like computer technology with Amiga and stuff like that. So they were operating Mac, so they liked that part. And they said, we're going to use you for the magazine instead. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like just total fanboy moment there. So, and yeah, I think I was a junior in high school when I was there, and that's when I got right into there. And then I was with the magazine all the way up until about 2002. So over 11 years I was with them, so.
We're tied. So
We're tied.
Yeah, you
Terry and I got hired on the same day.
Okay, well, Terry Minnich comes first alphabetically.
Oh, okay.
I make the rules.
Yeah. I'm Terry Minnich, and I started at EGM in 1991. And it was Steve Harris who went to this, basically it was a kind of like these local trade shows where you just brought your games and you traded them with other people. He was there, and he was at a local one that I went to, and he was interviewing for editors. And I'm like, okay, sure, I will totally sign up for that. And so I didn't hear back from a while after that happened. I was working at Electronics Boutique at the time, and I was paging through the magazine, just pining through like every issue and just like, imagining working there. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to be a pest. So I just ended up calling like every day, hey, you guys, what do you think? Can I come in? And they're like, yeah, maybe. And finally, they said yes. They said, okay, fine. We're looking for people. Come on in. And I got an interview, and met Ray at the same time too. And we both interviewed for the magazine. After they were like, well, okay, this is cool. You can write. You can play games. That's awesome. Here, organize all these games over here. So I was organizing like what was considered like the closet back then of games, and then I did all that, and then I'm like, okay, I'm all done, and then they're like, oh, that's great, and I'm just like, am I hired? I already did work for you. Am I hired? And and they're like, yeah, we think so. I'm just like,
I could totally
I
see,
sure hope so.
I could totally see Steve saying that. Yeah, I think so, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I was like, all right, fine.
The office was very, very laid back.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
a
there was
complete
all
shock, like
kinds
this.
of things on the floor. So.
Like I said, I thought it was like this massive California. It was just like 6 dudes in a room.
Yeah.
It was
Small.
like a dorm room.
Very shy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I got in, and I started with fact files, and then ended up doing Tricks of the Trade, which I was then a little bit more known for. So then my moniker became Trickman Terry. So off to you.
Off to me, yeah. Well, you know what was great was I didn't have to, you know, because you start any new job, you're the noob and you're scared, you know, but Terry was there. You know, so Terry and I bonded very quickly and became really good friends. I'm Ray Price, by the way. I probably should have said that, right? It's like, it's an intro, but you should, yeah. But having Terry there was great because we instantly bonded and we found out not only our love of games, but pop culture and all the, you know, we were into a lot of the same things. So it was real easy. The way I ended up getting in there was I went to grade school with Martin Alessi, if you've heard that name. I've known him since kindergarten. And, you know, he, a little bit after high school, he had called me and he says, I got some news for you. He says, we were big fans, just like you said. You know, we were fans of the magazine before we were ever conceived of being there. And like you, I thought, you know, oh, it's in California somewhere, you're right? You know, why would it be here? Or why would it be? But Martin called me one day, he says, I got a job at EGM. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I work at EGM, dude. I got a job there. And I'm like, I'm like, are you moving to California or something? He's like, no, man. He's like, it's 2 blocks from my dad's house. And I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, okay, well, first question, are they hiring? And he says, well, soon, you know. So then, you know, eventually it worked out. And then, yeah, the day Terry and I skipped the helpline. Yeah. And they just put us right. I guess they needed help on the magazine right away, you know. So Ken was overworked, and you know it was just
Closets organized.
right. Closets needed to be organized, so they hired a couple people. And so, but no, I skipped the. And he's told me this story a bunch of times, and I'm like, dude, I don't remember that. I just like they put me with Vallas right away.
I'm sorry.
And yeah, so am I. They were like, well, sit down with this guy. So I sit down with Vallas, who had been hired maybe
A couple months before.
a couple months before me, but he was like this revered like scholar that you know like
I was there since like the beginning or something.
yeah,
like that.
I thought he had been there for years, and I was like, you're this great scholar who's going to teach me, and I was like nerding out. I like that your name is the same as the game Vallas on TurboGrafx.
Oh, I got made fun of so many times by everybody for that one.
And
so.
yeah, so it was but both of these guys, you know, and Ken, you know, everybody, you know, it's like really was like a family, you know. It was like really like Ken said, laid back, and just we were in the trenches making this magazine. There was like less than 10 of us, and we quickly became a family, and a lot of inside jokes and a lot of you know, just all kinds of
A lot of late deadlines.
yeah, a lot of. I mean, you got to think about this. We're 17 years old. Maybe Ken, you were maybe a little bit, but a couple.
You
Yeah,
were just out of college then, I think, right? Oh, you
Yeah.
were still okay. Gotcha.
but we were young, and you know, I was 17. You probably.
Oh, I think I was 6. I want to say I was like maybe 17, 18 tops.
We're in high school.
Yeah, I was
and we
a
have no
junior in high school.
concept of like we're making this worldwide produced and there's like it's not only EGM, right? It's Megaplay and it's Super NES Buyer's Guide and it's Super Gaming and it's like and we're 17 years old and we're like deadline. Okay, EGM's done. All right. Oh gosh, shit, we got to work on Megaplay now. Okay, all right, Megaplay's done. Okay, we got 3. Oh no, Super NES Buyer's Guide's due. Okay, and that's right.
It was just one mag to the next. The fascinating thing about old school EGM is that none of us had degrees.
Right. Yep.
None of us were like, you know, English majors or any of that stuff. We were gamers first. We played the games, we beat the games. We beat the hell out of those games, right? So we had to master the games, and then we had to map the games, and we'd have to figure out what made them tick, and that's how we would build our fact files. And we had to do it in such quick time constraints. You would get like 3 days. Okay, you got 3 days, beat this game. Take all the pictures, map it out, write an article, create the graphics, put it on a page, done. And it was like that day in, day out, and it's probably one of the best times of my life, honestly.
We lived on double cups from 7-Eleven.
Yeah, I mean, it was late night shenanigans. We didn't have an hour. There was no hours. There was no 9 to 5. That didn't exist. It was when you woke up, you got up, you went to work, you worked until you collapsed, and then you crawled into bed, and that might be a blanket under your desk sometimes, or you would go back home and fall asleep. But it was just it was like a dormitory. It was like a dormitory of a bunch of, like a clan. We were like like today's vernacular, you'd be like a clan mates, all fighting the same battle and just having a great old time doing it and just making new connections and hating the same games most of the times. And sometimes we'd argue over games, some games that they liked and I sure as hell didn't. And, that was just part of the fun, and because we were so close, it was a very, it's a very emotional time for me. I was just, like I said, I had just started college and I wasn't even legal age yet. None of us were. Yeah. And we were surrounded by, people that, like nobody knew who we were. They didn't know who we were. We didn't know who they were, but we just know that we were putting out a magazine that people around the world were reading. And it was like, was this real? And I don't think it ever really sunk in for a lot of us for a long time.
But one that really sunk me, it sunk in for me because obviously I was a fan of the mag, but I still remember one time going to an electronics boutique and there was like some kids like, oh my God, you work for EGM? I'm like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I was talking to him and when he ran away, he was like, oh wow, I met someone from EGM. I'm like, did that just happen?
Am I famous?
Yeah, I'm like, did that happen? I'm like, I never thought that would happen in my life.
Yeah. I mean, it did, like you said, the way things worked in the office. If you've ever seen the movie Grandma's Boy, I mean, we've often talked about how eerily realistic that movie is. We're like, we saw that movie, and we're like, who did they know?
Yes,
there.
It was an inside
how
job.
did they get this so accurate? Mm-hmm. Like that's exactly how it was there. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, Ed was basically Dad. Right. If you heard somebody go "guy" like across the hall. That was probably Daniel getting in trouble for something. So you could usually tell by the tone what was involved and whose doors was being slammed.
Or he was also bashing on the window to get attention.
Yep, because Ed Samran was he had a big, huge glass pane on one side of his wall, and on the other side was poor Dan. Danny Carpenter on the other side of it, and
he did scans.
He was doing like the scans and stuff like that, and every once in a while you hear bang, 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 bang on there because he's trying to get Daniel's attention. And I don't know, I got to see it from the layout of the room. I got to see it from a kind of like a little bird's eye view because I was across kitty corner to where this was all taking place, and we had partitions, these little short partitions where I could peek up over like this and see everything that was going on. Huh?
There's a picture.
Well, I don't have it here at the moment, but the point is that we had these little partitions, and I could peek up and I'd be like, okay, and I go back to work, and that's usually how things would work around the office. Is that, we would all try to all right, try not to get Ed's attention. Let's just get our work done, and then move on to the next task at hand.
Now, especially you, because you were also focused very much on contract publishing at that time.
Well, that was later on. So that came on at little after you guys came on. We started doing more of the contract publishing work, and what does that mean? Contract publishing was kind of I think it was a fairly new concept back then, and this was where the advertisers would pay us to create a guide of some sort to help promote their products that were coming out. So they would send us the prototypes and things like that, and we would make this little links buyer's guide kind of thing. And that's where what was another good one that I'm thinking of? That was one of the most popular ones.
The Atari one, the Atari Lynx one.
Well, that's one I just mentioned. The Atari Lynx one was one of the better ones I liked. That's also where the Game Pro Sucks thing came in because I can't help myself.
I was going to mention that. I was going to let you mention that.
So I couldn't help myself with that one. And we were a very mischievous lot. We like to play pranks on each other all the time, and this was one where we always had this little rivalry between the Game Pro guys and us. And it was a friendly rivalry, so we just had a saying. We just say Game Pro sucks. I don't know what they said about us, and I really don't want to know, but I'm sure it wasn't anything good. But so if you don't know, if you ever find the Atari Buyer's Guide that we put in that one issue with the Cyberball, there's literally, if you take the first letter of every sentence in the description, it reads out Game Pro sucks.
Yeah, somebody found it.
And I never thought anybody would find it. That was just one of those because nobody did that kind of stuff back then. It was just it was unheard of. Somebody actually found it, and then I had to pretend to get fired to save face because they made a big deal out of it. And what helped though is that Quarterman, who was Steve, did the same thing. So he couldn't in good conscience fire me for that. So because he did it himself, he'd have to fire himself. So we just kind of pretend, yeah, that guy, yeah, he got let go. Don't worry about it. So.
Well, so we've heard the names Steve and Ed, but we haven't really sort of introduced that part of the cast that's sort of not here, right? So I mean, no one on the panel was there at the inception of the magazine, the creation or anything, but maybe just kind of tell us a little bit about the structure when everyone was there. Like who were you working for?
It did change quite a bit over the years because we split out, like the different magazines would split, but Steve Harris was the owner. Like what he said goes. Didn't matter how outrageous it was.
Now what he said goes, but what he said was never heard directly by us. It was always said to someone else, and then we'd hear it from Ed or Martin.
Occasionally he would just walk through and make a comment, and that's about it.
So I would, Martin or Ed would come in, Steve said this, and I said, okay, well tell Steve this, and then they would go to him. Steve sat he had his own office at the end of the hall, and it had the biggest leather chair I've ever seen in my life. It was this giant, like a throne. And on the front of his desk, he had a gold placard, and I'm not making this up. The gold placard said, Steve Harris, God Emperor of Sendai.
Yep.
And so when you...
Sendai Publishing is what we worked for. Right. So God Emperor of Sendai.
Yeah, that was literally on his desk. That was a real thing. So I'd only been in his office like maybe once or twice, and when you went in there, it was just like,
Well, I mean, you guys are kids. Are you like scared of
Oh yeah, like in my mind, I was like, I would, yeah, he would come in the office and I'd be like, oh, there's Steve. He's gonna touch us and turn us into ash, I mean,
and he could lose his temper quite easily if things didn't go right. So there was one particular night. That was actually one point that I worked on. I started switching over to night shift to actually help out with the printing of things. Where I was actually working, what was my time that I worked there at night? I forget. It was like I want to say I came in at like right at 4 or 5, and I worked until like the morning.
Yeah.
And then you had to pass the torch over there. But there was one night, it was just Steve and I working there, and the magazine wasn't going out. The film wasn't working, because back then when we used to print things onto film, we had these giant Linotronics that would actually, we would take the everything on optical disc, we would put them in there, and we would just run the files directly to plate and trying to save some money. I was the only guy working there, and keep in mind, I was still a high school trying to do this sort of thing, and it was just he and I, there was some page that was not going to go out, and there was something according to the pagination where these pages had to go out. I was like, I swear this wasn't supposed to go out there. He's like, no, it's supposed to. Is there any kids here? I was gonna say, so I know what they're. So he's like, supposed to go out at this time, and I'm like, oh my god, and he was like freaking out. There was a point where he was just walking back and forth, just pacing. I'm like, I'm gonna die. I am going to die. This is my last day working there. And I remember he walked away, and I told him that, like, our vice president at the time, Mike Riley. I'm like, yeah, I swear Mike said it was going to be working at this was supposed to be done at this time. He's like, no, it's not supposed to be. And he walked off to talk to him. I'm like, waiting for him. And one day he comes back, or not one day, a couple minutes later, he comes back, points his finger right at me. He's like, you are going to hold him down, and I am going to beat the shit out of him. And I'm like, but first when he was pointing his finger at me, I'm like, I'm dead. That's it. That's like you said. I was going to turn to ash.
a laser was going to come out.
Yep. But ironically, that actually almost bonded well after that. After that, I was just used to that. So when he goes on a tangent,
you're on his team now. Yeah,
exactly.
You're going to beat the crap out of this guy together. Yeah.
Not quite at that point, but no, now when Steve's throwing a tantrum, I'm like, nah, that's good. I know how to deal with this now. After a while, so.
I think maybe, I don't know if Ken, maybe you had slightly different relationship with him.
A little different, yeah, because I mean, I came on when it was basically, there was only a couple of us doing the whole magazine. It was a smaller team, so we talked more in the beginning. But still, he had this air about him. He was not very approachable sometimes, and there was a time when we had these old Mac 2FX machines. Those were the beefy machines, okay? So, and we got some Quadras, and we're like, wow, we got some Quadras.
I remember the day we were sitting like, it has an entire gig in it.
I know. Well, there was a day I had to actually go up and I said, you know what, we're doing more and more, and these games are getting higher res. They're getting more. There's more colors we have to deal with. We had these raster op boards that we had to use for capturing the work that we were doing. and they had bigger RAM needs to run properly. Like Photoshop, we graduated from Photoshop 1.0 right to 2.0. I was like, oh my God, the RAM. We needed more
layers.
I know, layers. Oh my God. Anyway, we needed more RAM, and I was looking up the prices for this because at this time I basically became also I was basically the server engineer and the desktop guy. Like I was the tech guy. So the bill was like $90,000 or something like that, and we're talking not today's numbers, right? We're talking back then.
90s numbers.
Yeah, 90s numbers, and this is like I'm like I have to propose this to Steve, and shockingly he took it well. He's like, are you sure we need this? I'm like, I'm absolutely positively sure we need this. This will stop all this crashing. We had to redo a lot of work because Photoshop would just crash and you'd lose everything that you'd been working on for like hours. And it was awful. And I said, it's because we're running out of RAM. It tells you, it literally says, out of RAM memory. Boom, you just lost everything.
It's a very commonplace that you would suddenly just hear a random F-bomb drive out of the corner.
Yes.
So
I'm like, this will fix it. It will be a lot more productive. Can we please get this? And he actually agreed. I must have been white as a sheet when I walked out of there because it was like, I had never seen him as calm as that because it's usually he would like start ranting and raving, as you've probably heard. He had a very, big temper.
He's
but
probably
I guess,
crunching numbers.
I'm sure he was. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a smart guy. I mean, he knows how to crunch numbers. He knows how to make money. And he must have determined that I was right, that basically we were losing a lot of productivity hours and it was costing him money by us having to redo work and potentially missing deadlines and things. And that what seemed to be a huge number to me was probably a pittance to him for that. So that was actually one of my moments with him where like I felt a lot more calm if I ever had to approach him with it, because I knew I had to just come with him with the right information and he wouldn't go off. So I think he just didn't like it when people just tried to like BS him with stuff. He had a good BS meter. So yeah, that was kind of my take on it.
He did like to mess with some people too. I still remember when Ed Semrad screwed up the 2 reviews with the game review.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one? Oh my goodness. So there was actually literally he sent something to press, long and short. Yeah, Ed just forced something to go to press, and 2 of the reviews in one of the pages just said the words game review in there and on those games.
Placeholder text.
Yeah, as the placeholder text. It was like, oh my God. And we were all sitting around. Well, usually we used to sit around and just talk about the magazine. We kind of review it. Exactly.
Catchy
Stuff like that.
another
Catchy
one.
phrase.
Yeah,
So
that's
mine was
another one.
Bleague. That's why I wrote that one. Yeah. But anyways, we would write, we would sit around in a circle and talk about the magazine and just review it and talk about things. We're just paging through, here's the problem there. And during that issue, we were all sitting around talking about that. And Steve Harris just walks by, he just walks in, and he stops at the door going outside and he just leans in. Ed, he's reading it, he's like, looks over at Steve, he's like, don't mind me, I'm just listening out and hearing what you're talking about. And Ed's like, okay, so, well, on this page, we're doing this. And just out of the blue, Steve goes, game review. And just stares right at him. And we're all just like, uncomfortable. And then he just walks out the door.
Yeah. Only Steve could get away with that.
Oh, yeah.
Only Steve could get away with that.
Well, I mean, let's talk about Ed. So, like we've mentioned Ed a few times. So Ed was
Editor-in-chief.
Editor-in-chief of EGM. Yeah. So what was the working relationship like?
He was
there?
more direct with us. He was the one who was
Very
giving-
serious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very serious.
Very
He was very
old-school
business.
journalism.
Yes, he was the journalist.
He was a real, actual journalist, unlike us. And I've always said, kudos to Steve for saying, this magazine, I want it to be real, and I'm going to hire gamers. I'm not going to hire journalists. But Ed was like a legit, real journalist, and like he would go and do things that needed to be done to get the stories that EGM needed. I believe he had that wall where he had all the photos that said no photos, please.
Yep.
And he would always take the picture of the no photos, please photo in the place.
That was a
wherever.
tradition. Any place we'd go, particularly at the Tokyo Game Show and
Yeah,
stuff like
so
that.
I mean, he was always willing to kind of do a couple things that needed to be done, to get the stories that the magazine desperately needed. So there was a lot of stuff like that. But as far as the working relationship, he was more direct with us. Like he would hand us like at the beginning of the month, it was like pagination. So a piece of paper that had all our initials on it next to what page we were going to do that month. And then we would get that and we'd highlight, okay, I have to do this before deadline. And then once we had that, then there'd be interspersed in there, Ed would find another game for us. He'd be like, oh, let's do a page on this or do a couple pages on this. And so we'd get that in addition to what we already had on pagination. So it was always fluid, what was going to be in the magazine. It was never like, the pagination would change like 5-6 times before the deadline actually hit and there'd be more games in there. And you know, whenever he didn't know, because we get a lot of games that they'd come in and they'd be in Japanese, and I couldn't read Japanese, and neither could Ed. So I would be like, well, Ed, what's the name of this game? I don't know, Stupid Ninja Kids. And that would be so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to write that, but I'll come up with something that I think it might be called. And yeah, so I mean, it was more direct. He was Steve was up there, Ed was more.
He was kind of the navigator to the ship, basically.
Yep. And he definitely delegated a lot more stuff out there. Like, here's a little fact there I'm going to throw out for his sake, because he is actually no longer with us, that Andy Barron actually used to write the majority of Ed's reviews. So for that case, because Ed hasn't wanted to focus on more on things, but Ed still wanted that presence in there to communicate with all the advertisers and all the people with the EPROMs. So Andy Barron actually wrote a good majority of his reviews after a certain point at the time, so under his name. Although he did have a little fun with this. Andy would appreciate if I would say, because Andy, of course, was a geek very much like us. One of the things, Andy, he actually started on from the Toho hotline. So he was also a Godzilla fan as well. So like when I think it was the TurboGrafx Godzilla came out, he just nerded it out in there. He's like, oh my goodness, they don't have Ibira, the sea monster, my favorite in there, as Ed Semrad. just so you know that Ed might actually get that in there. So. But if I was going to say another way to describe Ed was when I was at E3, like toward the much later years. It was a favorite memory I had. It was like when they moved out to I think it was Los Angeles, was there, and there was a Ziff Davis party, and I forget his name, but he was just retiring. He was like the president of Capcom USA, and like he was completely bombed out of his mind. I mean, we had like a lot of, we were drinking on there, and he had his arm around me. He's like, you know what? Your boss, Ed, was a son of a bitch. Let me tell you about that. And I actually explained to him, I said, the easiest way to deal with that, if you ever wanted the cover story for Ed, if you ever want the cover story or a place on the cover of EGM, you go talk to Ed Semrad and show him this and say, whatever you do, don't print this. Right. You will get the cover. It will be somewhere on the cover.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that made EGM unique for me as a reader, and especially in later years as an historian, sort of looking back and trying to find the things that we forgot. Yeah. EGM had this way of just having photographs of any game that was like remotely announced or shown, and I remember hearing stories from Ed of just like waiting on balconies where he's not supposed to be for like the looping video to come back around to the 3 seconds of footage for the game that he'd snap the shot. And something else that comes to mind for me that one of you maybe knows the story on this is Star Fox?
Star Fox 2?
No, the first Star Fox, right? Yeah, go for it.
There was the Nintendo booth at the time. I think it was CES still. We weren't doing E3 yet. Well, now nobody's doing E3, but back at the time. Sorry. But the Star Fox booth at CES at the Nintendo booth. Ed had made a little dongle that he's like, okay, so at some point when nobody's looking, you can plug this little dongle into the footage that Nintendo has up, unplug their footage, plug in this dongle, and then that goes to our camera so that we can video record all of this footage of Star Fox that went into the magazine. And Nintendo's like, how did they get all these pictures of Star Fox
in the
magazine?
It's like a 5-page spread of like every moment of the demo. It's like ridiculous.
Was that Star Fox or Star Fox 2? Because I swear we did that for Star Fox 2 as well.
Star Fox.
Was it the original? Okay. My memory must be
Maybe you repeated it for 2.
I know we did it for 2. We did in EGM 2. We did an entire like 4-page spread on it because we actually captured direct footage of there, and we managed to sneak it in because Nintendo was they did not want us touching anything.
How did they let you do that again?
They did. That's the thing. We were very sneaky about things like that. There was one time, I remember, I think it was Nintendo came in, they were showing off, I want to say it was like Kirby's Avalanche or something like that, and like they came in with a Super Nintendo and they had like these like steel bolts on it and everything. And no, actually I think it was Donkey Kong Country 2. They came in to show that off with there. And I remember we actually arranged it where we had our desk and we said, okay, here's the plugs that go in. And it appeared that it looked like it would plug in over into the TV and behind there. And we had everything set up. But secretly, we actually had everything going off into another system. And it was Mark LaFay, Candyman, who was over in a booth, like kind of nearby doing his work. And we had a keywords like, okay, well, let's get this rolling or something like that. And he would just go in and hit record. while we started playing that game. And that's how we got all of Donkey Kong Country 2.
Yeah, and everybody was constantly, how did they do that? That was Ed. That was Ed. I mean, Ed made a lot of that stuff possible.
Ed was also, he was a good photographer. That was his thing. Before we had things like Photoshop and stuff like that, he was the one responsible for helping stitch the maps together. He actually had, I saw this before, right before I even got, when I was still working the helpline, I saw he had his big whiteboard, and he would take all, just pictures of pictures of pictures. He would be watching Martin play the game, because Martin was there, he was there, and he would do it, and he would take pictures, and they would stitch them all together. He would get them all developed. And he would literally, he had his little X-Acto blades, and he would be putting them all together so they would fit almost seamlessly.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, and he had them all up on a board, and then he would take one new shot that would help hide the stitches, because the picture of a picture is never quite as good as the first picture, but it helps hide those little lines and stuff. And that's how they did maps originally, and that was almost all Ed.
I remember there was also a time that I think it was Tekken 3 came out. He was, again, he wasn't supposed to record that. He just got a new camera that he wanted to show up. Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is, welcome to EGM right there. You're not supposed to take this. We got it. So we figured out a way. He actually was he got this new fancy camera that he had to convince Steve, because Steve, again, liked to mess with him a lot, but he had to make certain that this camera was invested in there. And so he had to do this really jackleg recording of Tekken 3 when it was on this small demo thing, and he managed to do it. I remember he passed me. This actually kind of led to me doing photo retouching later, which I really loved doing. He passed all the images, the videos to me, and he's make certain this stuff looks really good. And I that's where I started retouching everything, recoloring everything, just to make certain it looks like a legit screenshot. And I remember him walking out of the magazine oh my God, these are amazing. He was so happy. I think more just a relief that he could go to Steve and say, yeah, it was worth the investment, really, Steve.
But then didn't he made all the cones for the cameras too?
Yeah. So Ed is also a very tall person, right? So he would go on trips to Japan, and he'd be literally 3 feet taller than everybody else. He was very tall, and he had a knack for getting his camera and getting he could be behind, all the way back there, and he could zoom in when you're not supposed to be up there taking pictures, and he would be there and getting all these shots. And he came up with an idea when they started doing these weird tower things, and you would have these LCD monitors, and if you tried to take a normal picture of it, your flashes, it was a dark area, so the flash would get in the way. It would look awful. The lighting, there would be lighting, this kind of lighting here up here would bounce off of the CRTs, and it would mess your pictures up. Well, he came up with this crazy idea of these collapsible cone that you could quickly put up, and it would be 4 sides, and we would quickly assemble it, and then it would be one of our jobs to walk around with Ed and then quickly put it up together, put it up to the screen, and he would get in there and he would get a perfect shot of every single thing that was going through we couldn't see what he was doing, except we had this we sort of could. There was this little latch on the side we could kind of pop open and see, yep, that we've got everything in frame, and we did a whole show that way. And I think we had to switch. I would go with him for the first hour. Somebody else would follow after that. It was crazy. So yeah, he was really good at what he did.
Well, and what's remarkable about what you just talked about is that you'd be at CES or E3 or whatever, and it'd just be checklist every game, right, that's on a TV, and there are multiple games where the only photographic evidence we have that they ever existed was you guys snapping photos at the show. Otherwise, they were just a title in a list with no description, and that's it. But I mean, that's what makes EGM in this era, especially remarkable today. I think is just the complete we're gonna grab absolutely everything. We're the first to tell you about it.
Yeah, and it was also a time of when doing reviews and things like that. I mean, people here probably know, but if they don't, I'm also was the reviewer Sushi-X.
I was
no. Anyway, so yeah, I know. So it's not news anymore. I used to have a wiki page at one point, but they deleted it. But anyway, point is that I had the unique ability to say whatever I wanted. They couldn't fire Sushi-X. Nobody knew who Sushi-X was. I could be literally in the booth, and in fact I was. There's a picture floating on out there where I was fighting people, playing Champion Edition, Street Fighter all day, and that was the best show I ever had. I love that show. Won a lot, lost a lot. It was just great. Didn't matter. But the fun part was that we had a bunch of people. Oh, is that Sushi-X? No, it's just some white guy. So they were like, nah, that can't be him, and whatever. And there were very few people that picked me out of the crowd. It was like my name was always on the magazine, but I was rarely ever featured in anything. I think I was featured in that one guide where we all had like pictures of us sitting on the machines and stuff like that. It was like horrible.
You're seeing it on the Genesis.
I think you were also
I
in
was
the
sitting- I
Atari
was-
Lynx thing too, weren't you? I remember Martin holding the big cart, and I think you were doing something there.
Yeah, that was one of the guys that we did. That was like the only one that I was ever actually featured in, but my name was always there. And I always laughed because nobody knew who I was, and I was also an editor there. There's a game, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was one of the RBI games. I think where they had the editors of the magazines as the players, because they couldn't get the license for the actual players.
Extra innings?
It might have been. It may have been. I'll have to look that up. I'm getting old, guys. Just bear with me here. But if you find it, you'll see it. Both Sushi-X and my character are the power hitters. Both of them. Not the other. Nobody else. We're the power hitters. But we're both featured on there. And I always laughed at that because I'm like, I think they knew, but I don't think anybody ever told them. But I think they were guessing it was me. So because the stats are similar and everything. It was like, yeah. So. But this whole dream that we lived once upon a time has really, I don't know, it marked us for life. I mean, we made a lot of friends. We have some friends here in the audience today that we met through our ventures. And
For me, it was my college experience. That's
I mean,
actually what I did. That was literally my college experience.
I actually
didn't
left
go,
college
so.
because of it. It became a career for me, and I never really finished college, but it got me to where I am today at the end of the day. Even though I never did continue journalism, there was a point when I left, and I did go to work for Steve again on one of his other ventures, but after that I was the tech guy also, so I went into technology and engineering and things like that. So it got me to where I am, and but the whole camaraderie, the whole dorm atmosphere and everything, like I said, we did a lot of shenanigans with each other. And I did want to bring up, because it is April Fool's, I said, some of you may be curious about some of the origin of the Sheng trick, which, again, I started it. Ray contributed a portion, and I actually have a little slideshow I can go over a little bit if you're interested, just to kind of give you a little how we dealt with our stress in the office. So when I was still going to school, I played Street Fighter instead of going to school. I was kind of like I didn't like college very much, and they had actually had the original Street Fighter game there, and
We're talking Street Fighter 1?
We're talking Street Fighter 1. So I have always been a Street Fighter fan, right? And then when I got onto EGM, I got to play they got the JAMA board for Street Fighter 2, and I got to do the guide, right? I got to go through and I got to take individual screenshots and video snaps of every single moveset of every single character. And that's very stressful. That's a lot. And I don't know if you guys remember that. I had to rewire the entire JAMA board because it came in it was a mess. And I had to completely, I was in there like soldering and everything.
It was
And
like this total exposed board. I'm surprised nobody got electrocuted.
I'm surprised I didn't electrocute myself.
I think you eventually build like a housing for that,
Yes.
I believe? Yep.
Yes. So I got it together and I got it working, and then I took all these pictures and I was so, I think, I don't know, almost drunk on Street Fighter at that point. I took a couple shots in the game, and I'm going to show you this here. You guys probably all recognize the whole this little trick here that we've published, right? So the first screenshot that you see on the screen here, that's just a normal little screenshot. There's nothing special about it. But there was something funny about the way that Bison looks when he's all depressed, because he's like, aw, he's got this look, that I started working on the second screenshot, where I'm like, well, what would happen if there was a secret boss? And if you remember, saw the first screen, I got so used to seeing that Sheng, you must defeat Sheng to stand a chance. And I was one of the original people when I first saw that. There's got to be a character. It has to be. There's some secrets in here.
A lot of people
because
in
the
the arcade
first
thought it was.
Street Fighter was all about secrets. There was no published movesets, nothing. You had to learn what the moves were and how to do them. And myself, Howard Grossman, and Apoorva Desai, all, they were also both editors in EGM. They came along later. we learned all that stuff, and we were like, there's all this stuff in this game, and it's all secret and stuff. And so when we saw that phrase, we're like, there's got to be a secret character. So we were part of that bandwagon, right? So I'm like, you know what? We've got this newfangled Photoshop versions and stuff like that. What if I create one? So I went and I started I can recolor stuff. I can take parts of this character and put them on over here. So there's pieces of Vega in here, and I made it look like he was being tossed off to the side. And I'm like, hey guys, come check this out. Look at this. And I'm like, and again, this is like a big dorm area, and I'm like sitting in this big open spot with the jam in here. The other guys are off doing their work, and we were coming up on. It was coming up where if we were going to do an April Fool's gag, we had to come up with something.
Yeah, I think the prior year Martin had done Ninja Turtles, where
Simon
Simon Belmont in Ninja Turtles,
Which,
too.
if I recall correctly, was a mistake. He was making a map, I believe, of Ninja Turtles, and he copied. We were usually at that time. It wasn't doing how Ed did. We were actually taking screen grabs and pasting them in Photoshop. Right. And apparently, you can correct me if this is wrong, because this was before my time. I believe Martin was already working something with Simon. He had Simon Belmont, and just by accident, he copied and pasted it into a Ninja Turtle screenshot. I was like, oh my god! And then he realized, wait. And then you guys realized, oh, this is hysterical. Let's just run with it as an April Fool's thing. And thus, an entire legacy was born from that mistake.
So I just happened to play with it, and we got the guys, and we were just busting up laughing, and then we let's do another shot. So we did another shot, and this is my favorite shot. So this is the one where you get a better picture. Oh yeah, sorry, I can't. Yeah, this is the one where he's doing doing the dragon punch, but he's got the flaming hand on it. So Ray's like, oh, well, why don't we make his hand on fire or something like that? So I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, Bison's got a flaming fist thing. So
yeah,
why don't I one frame where it's his hand's on fire? So I managed to grab it because I had all these screenshots. So I grabbed the frame, recolored it, put it on there just right, and I'm like, that's perfect. Now what? So we're like, okay, well, that's all great and good, and then when people started seeing, more and more people, there was a crowd of all the editors that were around us, and we're like, what are you guys thinking about this? And we're and then next thing I know is Steve comes by, and he's like, what's going on? And this is one of those rare things where Steve, come check this out. You think maybe we could use this for April Fools? And he took one look, and he's like, make it happen.
He loved it.
He loved it. So at that point, it became all about, well, how do you make it? How do you unlock this character, right? So we tried to make it as ridiculous as possible. Because I'm sitting there thinking, I think I've played through this game more than anybody here, and I'm trying to think what would be damn near impossible to do. And that's where the whole legend of getting through untouched through the whole game, and the perfecting everything, and all this and then being able to survive against M. Bison never getting touched once, and all this other stuff. And
you had to go 10 rounds.
Yeah, it was 10 rounds. Yeah. Because to 10 rounds, and then the game would just do the thing. So it would just he would come out and kick his ass, and then you have to fight him. And then we started describing he can do all these extra moves. He can do he doesn't pause after fireballs. He's got all this. Yeah, and so we made it just ridiculous, right? And then we're like, this looks actually pretty good. I think this is going to fool a lot of people. So how can we? But we want to have a contest. And we want to be fair. So what can we do to even make it more ridiculous? So we put in the honorable mention thing in here, right? Of W.A. Stokens, waste tokens, right? And fooled again, ha, which isn't even a state. We're like that. Yeah, that was all Martin's idea. He came up with that. That was brilliant, right? And then we literally put the contest on the page, and we're like, we can't do anything more than that. That's like perfection. We're like, we could not top that. It's like if somebody falls for this, I don't know what to tell you. I can't. That just means people are gullible at that point.
Yeah, bearing in mind this is pre-internet, right? Mm-hmm. And so we started hearing through osmosis that people, despite all of our clues, were falling for it. And arcade owners were like, "You're breaking our machines. The quarter mechs are full." And
they were complaining about getting money.
Yeah, they were complaining that the quarters were constantly stuck because the boxes were constantly full.
I was getting hate mail in the trick section.
Oh yeah, because that's your section, right? That's your responsibility.
I was responsible for this. I'm opening letters and I can't do this. What's wrong with you?
Poor Trickman, he was sweet.
I spent my whole paycheck trying to unlock this Trickman.
Yeah. And then it showed up in Japan.
Yeah.
They started reprinting it like, oh, look at this cool trick we found. Like,
So eventually, this is legit. This really happened. Somebody comes running into the office. I don't remember who it was, but somebody came in. Guys, call Capcom corporate number right now. Call Capcom's corporate. So all right, we call, and it's their recording. And they're like, hi, thank you for calling Capcom USA. If you're calling about the EGM trick, please call EGM at this number. So apparently they were getting inundated
I didn't
with
even
calls.
know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I don't know who it was that ran into the office and called Capcom corporate. Capcom corporate's probably mad at us. All these players are mad at us. And we found all this out through osmosis. No internet. We had no idea. Like, I think we've done something horrible here.
I thought we did something great.
Yeah, but like, are we in trouble?
Horribly great.
Because remember, I didn't care. I'm like, they don't know who I am. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
And that's the end of the legacy of a secret character ever being in Street Fighter.
Oh yeah, that's the end.
Nothing ever
Never
came
happened
of that.
again.
Yeah,
No,
never again.
that was it.
We love this in particular because once Super Street Fighter, we actually got a cabinet for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And again, it was like fate. They tasked me to do the exact same thing, where I had to go through, I had to do all the move sets. I was going to do a guide on every single character, like, do this huge write-up. I think it was like a 16-page thing. It wasn't like something, it was
huge,
massive, right? And I'm like, I'm trying to remember exactly how it occurred because it blew my mind when it occurred. But then this happened,
Yeah.
and we're like, what?
What?
We're like, what? We're like, what? Like, you guys can't see it. It's basically, what's this? Who's this? What is going on here?
That's my guy. I drew that.
I know that.
We're like, wait a minute. So when this occurred, we're like, we completely freaked out. And then we actually, I think it maybe Ed made it, somebody contacted Capcom, and I think that they actually gave us the code for a character select, because we had unlocked the thing. So we were like, okay. So we were just flabbergasted that something that we did, we're just a bunch of kids, right? And we're just being a bunch of goofballs, actually had an impact on the industry like that. And and then this guy over here, he went and did it again. Again,
Definitely also with your help, but yeah, with that,
Yeah,
eventually
so-
Street Fighter 3
so now he
finally
did it
happened.
for 3, and again, these pictures are just amazing. Now my quality is not that great. The originals look better than this.
Like I said, at that
but
point,
his-
I really went into Photoshop and manipulation. That's where I wanted my career to go. So
yeah,
then I was just having
he was a much
blast
better
with it.
Photoshop shopper than I was, but he did
Ironically,
a
I
great
just want
job.
to say that you were probably half the reason of it, because mostly because when the Linos kept bombing, I had to fix everything, and then I had to learn a lot about Photoshop from that. So.
That's tough for you, but
Oh, exactly. It's like, what's bombing? The page is bombing. Who did it? Ken. Oh.
But what I found really fascinating, though, is that they even took what you did, and they basically ended up having to create Goken for it.
Yes.
And he's got a similar design. They do it enough to make it different, right? They always did it enough to make it different. And I mean,
What do you have, like the double fireball
He's got
that
the
he
double.
created on
He's
there,
got double
so-
fireballs. I mean, he's got the ponytail thing rocking and all this other stuff. And if you ever check his catch lines, like I think literally his versus catch line, I'm pretty sure it's his versus one, not his normal ones, says you must defeat me to stand a chance.
Yep.
And I know on the PlayStation, that's one of the little tags you can put on there. There was one of the
achievements and things?
There's one of the achievement things that you can unlock that you can put on there that talks about that exact thing. And there's even what was it? I forget this little
Achievement
thing.
unlock.
This little achievement unlock. Sheng is in another castle for this one here.
Yeah, that's real.
And then and again, I just love this rendering for Ken. I had to put it in there. I can't wait to play 6. Looking at that, but the fact that Ken got his flaming dragon punch and all this, it's like we actually have an impact. And
Well, that's what was funny about that when Akuma was revealed. That one of my major contributions to it was the flaming dragon punch, and
Yeah, he was
they put him
pissed.
in the game, and then he doesn't have it. That's the one thing he doesn't have. He
Ken
doesn't have
did.
the flaming dragon punch.
They
But
already
then
gave it to
I
Ken at
played
that
as
point.
Ken, and I was like,
yeah, so they're like, they took
thank
the
you.
thing.
You're
They did the
welcome,
thing.
everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The person who created the flaming dragon punch right here.
Yeah, I go into arcades and I see people play as Ken and do the flaming dragon. I'm like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So I know we're running a little bit low on time here.
Yeah, we are.
you wanna do under the kick?
Did you want to tell that story really quick?
I can tell the other.
The kick story is pretty
Okay,
good.
so
Yeah.
remember I said I played Street Fighter. So this is a little add-on thing. This is not a joke. This is not April Fool's. I'm telling you, this is not it's coincidence that today is April Fool's that this happened. So I have another thing I want to show you here. I always thought that there was something with the original Street Fighter. Again, that game was my jam. I think I played that game for about 9 months straight every single day I was at college. And let me just show you a little something here. My presentation. Oh, here, let me use a mouse. I hate those little pads. There we go.
Not getting any younger, Ken.
I know. Hold on. There we go. All right. All right. So you all know the original move set. You know, your typical fireball. That's this. This is the prototype of the game. Now, when I first, you've probably, you've seen the Dragon Punch, and they're super powerful. If you ever played the original one, like it takes over a third of your health out. It's every hit it does. It doesn't matter if you block it either. Don't block it, you actually get hit more than once, and it does even more damage. But
you're like the only Street Fighter 1 expert I've ever met.
yeah, so there's this really cool site called Arcade History. I recommend you go check it out. They got a lot of really good information, and they talk about the prototype, because when I found out the prototype was out there, and I had to do the whole MAME thing and everything and to get to it, and I was like, I checked it out, and I had to get every bit of information I found in there, because I'm like, there's no hurricane kick in here, because I was trying to do like a little thing on it, and I'm like, there's no hurricane, because it sucks. And I look, I'm like, it says, oh, the hurricane kick does not seem to be in the game. I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. But then I remembered, I'm like, there used to be this little piece of art on the side of the original Street Fighter cabinet, and it was in some of their promo materials and things like that. And when I was playing this game with my friends, one of the reasons we played so often is we were trying to unlock everything, and we quickly unlocked the fireball, hurricane kick, dragon punch, but we were trying to find this right here, and it didn't exist. And I kept thinking, well, you know what? I bet there was like an homage to it when you've got like, Adon's kick when he does like this kind of thing, and then you got Akuma's kick, which looks even more like the artwork that's on the side, right? Well, because I actually had the ROM and I was able to decompile it, I found one little interesting piece of art, just one little snippet. So I got creative, and I found this. It's a hidden move in the prototype that didn't come out. They turned it into the hurricane kick. And I have my suspicions on why they did it, because if you don't know, the first rendition of it was 2 buttons. You had a joystick and 2 buttons, and the harder you hit it, the harder the move, right, that came out. I'm guaranteeing trying to pull this off, even with the normal joystick, right, and normal buttons, it was very hard for me to pull this off. The original Street Fighter was not forgiving when it came to how you did the moves. In fact, the move actually came out after you let the button go. It wasn't a push button. It was a push let go motion, and the timing of it is very difficult. And this blew my mind, and I was just like, I've come full circle. I can leave this earth in peace now, because I found that move, and that was like one of my pinnacle moments when I found this. Now I did show this 15 years ago at this venue, and it didn't catch on at all.
Tweet this.
Nobody knows about this. I've not seen it. I can't find this anywhere. This is my original footage. I actually have the video where I was taking the footage for all the screens that you have here, and this is from that.
I wish I had some of the original footage of the stuff we had back at the magazine. Some of the crazy things we had. On a similar note, I think I was telling you guys about that in the magazine. It was Mortal Kombat 2. Midway was always near us. And so we actually would always get perfect. We were like really close with them, and we would always try the beta tests for all the different Mortal Kombat games. And I remember we got to see like Mortal Kombat 2. They even sent us a cabinet one time just as a surprise. We're like, what? But anyways, I was Baraka had this spinning move with blades that he would do. And it was in the beta version of that, and then they removed it. Right. But we put it in the magazine saying it's one of his moves, and people accused us of removing.
Now, why would they not
Photoshopping
believe
that.
this?
Exactly. So I was telling them, and I have a friend of mine. He's like, you guys photoshopped it. I'm like, no, they didn't Photoshop. It's like, well, how do you know? It's like, how do you know they didn't do it? Because I'm the guy who does the Photoshop stuff. We didn't do it. It was actually there, and we were actually kind of smug about it. Like many years later, when they did Mortal Kombat Trilogy for PlayStation. And I think it was like on N64, and they actually put it back in.
Oh, good.
We felt a little redeemed about that, so we were smiling about that.
So guys, what do you think? Should I post that as a, hey, do you think this is real? It is April Fool's after
If you're
all.
going to do it today.
Yes, of all the days.
Oh, yeah.
They'll believe you.
Love that.
Really.
All right, you heard it here first.
Do we
then.
take questions?
I'll later
Yeah,
I'll tweet that.
so we are over time, but let's
There's nobody after.
Let's
There's
just run
nobody
it
after
until
us.
7.
Who cares?
So
There's nobody here.
let's do 2 or 3 questions, maybe. So yes, you right here.
You kind of answered my question because Midway is close to you guys. I was going to ask if you guys were contractually obligated to do Midway stuff, or you just genuinely liked all the shit they were doing.
Oh no, it was a friendship thing purely. There was nothing contractual at all with us. So
I was always just kind of confused by how much content there was centralized around Midway. 'Cause I
They were
grew up
local.
in suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah, they
that
can
made it
come
so
over,
much
right?
easier for us to
I
go.
was a magazine, and unlike you guys, I thought it was a California-based thing. And I came away
Nope,
with-
they were right in Chicago. So
Makes sense now, but now when you brought up the fact that you do contractual stuff, I'm just wondering if it was.
I don't think they ever did any contract work with us. So surprisingly, given how close we were with them, and actually, yeah, I mean, not just in distance, but how working well with them too. I mean, they would send us arcade cabinets. We had that. What's that racing one that they did? The water one. Not Cruising USA. It was Racing Water.
Hydro Thunder.
Hydro Thunder. Oh yeah, they sent us a whole Hydro Thunder cabinet there, and we
Two
had
of
like
them-
we
two
had,
of them so we could race
we had
each other.
Total Carnage cabinet that
Yeah.
they sent us. So
Yeah, a lot of it was like they were local, so it was we could go visit them. They could come bring stuff here. It was just an easy relationship, and there were times when if we didn't like something, we probably just wouldn't publish it. It's like they just better to say nothing at all, right? Now, I'm pretty sure Nintendo doesn't like me very much, but for the longest time because I still do not like the Game Boy. Sorry.
that was always a Sushi-X thing you did.
That
like
was
mobile.
me. That was not. That was just me. I just never liked it. So, SP, great.
I was gonna say one more thing that just reminded me. There's like some rumor about New Kids on the Block NES box art prototype thing that you guys got your hands on. You had to review it or something.
I was going to say I don't even. I remember this.
In a game of hockey using it as a box or
Yes.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so for those who maybe didn't hear, the question was about a promotional box for New Kids on the Block for the NES, which is a game that never shipped or was even made. I found out.
Game.
No, it was never produced. But you had a promotional box in the office, and the
Yeah.
question was about rumors of it being used as a hockey puck.
One of our deadlines that was really rough, like we were all saying, we were just like, all right, stir crazy, and we had to do something. And so so sometimes we played laser tag around the office or something, and sometimes we were just like, hockey, and we're just like, New Kids on the freaking puck, no. And then we're like, it's gonna be a hockey puck, and so we
Not
just,
the last thing that would be turned into a hockey puck.
yes. So we basically just used it for a nice game, and I mean, it wasn't completely destroyed, but it was like kind of mangled.
Someone has it.
Yeah, did you guys know that this survived and a collector has it?
Somebody actually has that. The one we used as hockey.
He's
puck?
on the show floor right now, in fact.
Wow.
Should we go and recreate that?
yeah, he would be happy.
Terry, you should sign it for him.
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, what's funny is that that's the only object that exists now for that product. Is this mangled box.
Yeah.
How do we were again we were children.
Yes, we were.
And no
We
one's
were
like,
trying
oh,
to cope
maybe
on the strategy, guys. We should talk about like how we were just laughing our butts off about Shadow of the Beast dancing.
Oh my God.
It was like the TurboGrafx one. It was like to the music, and we just really liked the music and Shadow of the Beast. And I just started playing. They had this, I think it was the PC Engine one. He would just hold out his punch if you would just do that. And we just started making this dance move out of him just to the music. And we was just late at night. Where it's how we mentally coped with things.
Yes, doing
And we were
strange,
just
crazy
laughing
things.
our asses off about that.
Oh, doing
so.
the mouse pads, the Mega CD intro with the dancing logo. We would do that with our mouse pads. And
We would just walk up and somebody
flip the mouse pad over, and we'd all sing it.
And the Dopefish song.
Oh my goodness, yes. What was that? It was Tetris Attack, right?
Not Kirby.
No, it was Kirby. It wasn't Kirby's Avalanche, but it was
Yoshi's.
It was a Tetris something. They called it Tetris,
Tetris
here in
Attack.
America. Tetris
Tetris
Attack,
Attack.
yeah. And there was this I forget what the name of the character is. We called him Dopefish because he goes dope every night there, and he would play this song, dun 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 dun.
So we,
and I
made
like
up, so we made up lyrics. We were like, dope, dope, dope fish.
You really young dope.
Yeah. So when it's late at night, your mentality. This is how you dealt with things.
Yeah. On your third
I don't know if you
deadline.
can tell, but I'm already getting that nostalgia. I'm about ready to tell them to shut the hell up. I got stuff to do because that was my role. I was the grumpy one because
Well, it was your famous one is the anytime you'd be listening in the office, there'd be just this ambience in the office of games being played, and there'd be nonsense going on, but you'd always hear a game playing, and you'd hear that distinct sound of someone in the office just died on their game. And inevitably, after you'd hear that sound, no matter what game it is, it was just unmistakable. Somebody just died in the game, and you'd hear Ken,
you suck.
Yeah.
Yep. Right on the corner, so.
Yeah.
That's
Almost that loud.
No one had any idea what was going on, but we knew somebody died in the game, and then
You suck. That was my catchphrase at the office. Yeah, I was not the most social person. Like again, I was doing a lot of stuff, contract publishing, reviews, pretending to be Sushi-X, all that fun stuff, and then these guys were all having a party over here, and I'm like, God, I've got an entire contract guide I got to get done in like 10 minutes. Would you stop it? And like then but I would be listening. I'd hear them do these shenanigans, and I would just once in a while I'd just pipe up, and that's just how
not 20 minutes ago. He was working on this
thing.
presentation.
Hotel room.
And so
I'm
the
doing
three
my
of us are
best to
goofing
ignore
off.
these
And I'm like, boy, does this bring back memories or what? There's Ken pretending he's not listening to us.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, we're at 7 o'clock, so you guys want to hang out for a little while and answer questions afterwards? Well, let's go ahead and end the panel. But thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much.